Hello, everybody, and welcome to Norm, the Cheers podcast that isn't and is also the Columbo Stand podcast. We've been off for a week. I hope everyone had a lovely holiday, fabulous New Year, and gentle Omicron. I hope it's been a lovely time. And I feel like we need to start this by talking about. It was either the last episode or the episode before that where we were just talking about 70s style in reference to Columbo. And now we have gotten Tookie full-blown Columbo.
Yeah.
This is this is not a rabbit hole. This is an oil well. She's down. She's in the base. She's at the core. What's happened, Tookie?
Listen, I don't know where what have I been missing the past 40 years that you people haven't told me? Because okay, Lieutenant allegedly Frank Columbo, because I Googled it, never had an official first name, but the name Frank has been seen on certain documents. I for a hot second, my Twitter name was Lieutenant Columbo Stan account, because that's where I'm at right now. Okay, we discovered it on Peacock. I initially found it browsing through the Xfinity on demand, and I watched a couple episodes. I was very drawn in. People getting murdered, Columbo solving it using logic. It's beautiful. Okay, but I'm watching now, starting from season 1, episode 1, and going forward. Did you know a young Leslie Nielsen was on like the
multiple
third episode of Columbo?
Episodes. Oh, not just the third. Leslie's in a couple.
Oh my
I'm
God.
90% sure. Oh, that's one of the joys of watching old Columbos. Is like William Shatner killed that lady.
Yeah.
It's all through it, like all these figures from everyone. The first episode, the Steven Spielberg episode.
Yeah.
The murderer is Sean Cassidy's dad.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
So good.
It's
so
amazing.
Delicious.
It's incredible. It's incredible. Also, okay, so I'm on the episode now. I think this is season 1, episode 4, where my mom used to always talk about this man, Roddy McDowall. Never meant anything to me. But now he blew up his step uncle. Okay. He took a car and blew this man up. It was I'm so ready.
Have you gotten to the Johnny Cash episode yet?
No.
Oh,
no, I had to sit through the Johnny Cash episode of The Simpsons, because we were doing a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle of The Simpsons cast, and we watched and we the guy in my house who I love, he's made me sit through the first at least 9 seasons of The Simpsons, because he can't bear to venture into season 10. And like for the longest, I have a whole white dad at home, it's fine. But like for the longest time, I'd be like, what is with white people? And then I watched The Simpsons and I was like, oh, okay, this explains everything.
It's a primer.
That should be required viewing. Like 1 through 9.
Yeah, the first seasons of The Simpsons, I was like, oh, this explains so much. So yeah, I sat through, I saw the Johnny Cash episode of The Simpsons where he voiced a peyote fox.
Yeah,
that was fun.
The Johnny Cash Columbo is really great because it's Johnny trying for an Emmy. Like he's trying hard, and you can also tell. And the ending of that one, and it's Columbo, so there's no real spoilers,
right?
But like when Columbo figures it out, Johnny also says, the pain was getting to me. I was going to be turning myself in anyway. And Columbo says, yes, sir, I think you would have. Like, Johnny's manager said, look, if you're going to be the murderer, we need to throw something in where you're also such a good person that Columbo has to acknowledge that you would have turned yourself in even if he hadn't figured it out. It's really great. It's really great. And he's like a gospel singer.
Oh
yeah. You need to watch it. Toot sweet.
Okay. That's on the list.
One of the great lost opportunities of Hollywood in the past 20 years was not having Joaquin Phoenix playing Johnny Cash, playing a murderer, in I don't know. I know he got the award, but we like society lost by not having that refractive moment.
Oh my god. Oh my god. I would
right.
be so here for that.
All right.
I'm
So there's
queuing up
lots to
some
talk
episodes.
about. Yeah, do it. Put them on the list. All right. Speaking of episodes, season 3, episode 18. I'm calling this the cotton candy episode of season 3 because I've had it a couple of times now. It wasn't unpleasurable, but boy, nothing stayed with me. It is called Barbette, which is like the most bland title of an episode that they have done. It's just very random. It wasn't bad.
It's a whipped cream episode. Like it is insubstantial, but it has its place and its charms.
This is going to alienate a whole sector of our lactose intolerant fans.
Oh,
but this is very much the oat milk whipped topping episode because they sell that at Whole Foods now.
Yep. I'm right there with you. All right, so let's get into this episode, and then we'll talk about our couple of weeks of COVID here. Dave, we know what's going on in the world now. We don't want to know what was going on in the world when Michael Richards tried to steal the bar from Ted Danson.
Well, weird sentence, Mike.
That was a collection of words.
February 14th, Valentine's Day, 1985. A simmering, a fuse was lit for American popular culture. We talked about this episode being insubstantial. This is a substantial moment. We won't realize it for a few months, but releasing on this day, Valentine's Day, appropriately enough, given the presence of 2 all-time classic ballads on this album, Whitney Houston's debut record drops.
Oh, Whitney!
The Whitney Houston eponymous record with her in the sort of beige sarong with her hair pulled. This record just kind of was around for a year, and then by the end of the year and into the following year, it just explodes. And ends up selling by the time things are all said and done, some 22 million copies of this thing have been sold worldwide. One of the greatest selling records of all time, one of the sort of universally acclaimed records. But yeah, this I kind of miss
sitcom appearances of all time that to my dying day I will insist boosted the sales of Whitney Houston's self-titled album, where she appeared on Silver Spoons and began a romance with Dexter Stuffins.
100%. I was looking at some of the promotional tour information about this, and I had forgotten about that particular appearance. And I can tell you that's something I will be Googling later on today. But yeah, I also it made me kind of wistful for celebrity that was allowed to kind of find itself. I don't know, maybe it's probably better now that things feel a little bit more democratic in terms of how people discover things and how quickly something can be sort of deemed exciting for the culture. But I there's something kind of I find myself kind of longing for. Clive Davis decided in 1982 that Whitney Houston was going to be a star, and they spent a year and a half finding the right songs for her album, and they poured hundreds of thousands of dollars into this album over the course of 2 years, and then they let the album sit out there for a year, and there was just this kind of trickle down of we believe in Whitney Houston is going to be a star, and then when it happened, it was of course you recognize this talent, and this is an enduring generational talent. So maybe I'm nostalgic for gatekeeping. I don't know. That's probably not great.
Mm-hmm. There is something about gatekeeping where it's there's something romantic about the champion who's going to make you a star. As much as we are against it, there is still this idea in the back of your head of the star maker who's going to find you. And there's something about that feels kind of good, because it also takes some of the work out of your hands, I think. That's part of it, at least in my head. the romantic idea of it. It's like, oh my God, I don't have to make a channel. I don't have to come up with all this stuff. I don't have to brand it. I just need to be talented. And then a powerful person will say, that talent is so undeniable, you're going to be rich and famous.
I mean, industry plants still definitely exist.
Yeah.
Allegedly, William Eyelash is one.
Really?
Allegedly.
Billie Eilish?
Yeah.
Yes.
Allegedly.
I could see Dave having my similar middle-aged confusion on William Eyelash, and I was like, I'm going to jump in here and help him out.
I was a second behind you, but I caught up.
Did you notice that, Meg? Did you notice that too?
Oh, yeah. Dog appearance.
Yeah.
We paid the dog tax on this show.
Yeah.
Always.
Worth it. Every penny.
Always. Tookie, what happened in this cold open?
Okay. All right. Let us assess. Okay. So it's a beautiful, short and sweet intro, by the way. So we've got Norm and Cliff bickering back and forth as they walk into the main bar from the hall. Chekhov. No, it was Ibsen. I'm telling you, it was Chekhov. Cliff, I remember it was the Cherry Orchard. And Cliff says, "Oh no, you're full of it, Norm. It was Ibsen. It was the Master Builder." And Norm's like, "Nope, Chekhov. I'm telling you." And they're, Chekhov, Ibsen, blah 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 blah, like kindergartners, essentially. And then Diane, who's sitting down, interrupts and says, "Excuse me, I don't mean to stop you by any means, but are you talking about Anton Chekhov and Henrik Ibsen?" And yeah, of course we're talking about, Anton Chekhov and Henrik Ibsen. And Diane's like, "Oh, this is wonderful," like elated at the fact that finally they're, discussing something erudite at this bar. And she's like, "Oh, this is wonderful. Perhaps I can be of some assistance. Maybe I can contribute to your literary inquiry." Cliff is like, "Well, I suppose you can help us, okay. Yeah. Okay. If anybody can help us, it's you." And Cliff asks, "What were you watching the night Norm stuffed his face with cheese doodles and whistled The Way We Were?" And Diane's face, which is a contender for my joke of the week, she makes this face and she goes, "Ibsen, and it was taco chips." And Cliff is like, "Oh, pay up. And Norm realizes his error and says, "Now that I think about it, it was Chekhov and cheese doodles the night Artie Sullivan claimed he could comb his hair with his feet." And Cliff is like, "Yeah, you're on thin ice arguing the classics with me. Roll credits."
I enjoyed the cold open this week. I thought it was fun. It might have just been me like hearkening back to my youthful theater days, but I did enjoy it because it seems like the easy sitcom joke was going to be Bill Chekhov and Jimmy Ibsen.
Yeah.
And it was going to be a sports thing. And it wasn't. I kind of like this cold open this week. I thought that was fun. Went in a slightly different direction. It was good. I liked it. Let's talk Barbette. All right. Basically just an A story this week. I think one of the things that hit me both times I watched this was Coach is gone.
Yeah.
This is when they start writing in excuses for why Coach is not there. He was not well enough to film. He dies at some point over the course of shooting these next few episodes. He is explained that he is away in Vermont, taking his driving test because he heard it was easier there. I enjoyed it both times, and even just them pretending that he was on the other line kept him in there a little bit. So I was sad and happy and preparing for life without Coach. So the A story this week, Michael Richards appears as Eddie, an old drinking buddy of Sam's that he does not remember at first, says, "Hey, I've got this piece of paper where you wrote down that you'd be married to Jacqueline Bissett in a year or I get the bar." And like most people, there you have Tom, who is a character who appears like once every year and a half to give legal advice. It's very random, but the actor does get to come back and do it. And he gets a nice little scene in season 5, I do recall, where he gets to do some fun stuff and is the guy who gets Sam to propose to Diane. So good stuff ahead for Tom.
That dude, by the way, is super interesting. He was the women's hockey coach at BU for like 3
What?
seasons.
Really?
Yeah, he's like he's on 11 episodes of Cheers. He's been in like 200 TV episodes. Hockey coach, I believe, also acting. He's a Massachusetts native. He lives in Gloucester currently, apparently. But yeah, was a BU professor, and also was the women's hockey coach for a few.
Do you have his name? Can we give him a shout out?
Oh yeah, it's Tom Babson.
Tom Babson, baby. Big fan, Tom.
He was one of my 80s moments just because his hair looks like the plastic hair on a Ken doll from back in the day.
It is lacquered. It is a nice, it's a thick look.
The 80s were really kind of the last time men used hairspray. I think. 90s we kind of moved into gel and mousse. But the 80s we still would like put that shape together and spray it down. We're like, all right, hold, baby, hold.
Aquanet.
Yep, that's why we don't have an ozone anymore.
Yeah, little white rain up in there.
Yeah. So, and basically he says, which I'm glad they do say, it's like, this is not going to be enforceable because A, Sam was drunk when he did it, and B, it's not a contract, it's a wager. And yeah, the courts won't enforce a wager. But what Eddie knows is that Sam is embarrassed about being a drunk, and he's basically just trying to get some money out of it. And Sam is saying, it's so embarrassing to admit that I was drinking again and that I did this while I was drunk. I'd almost rather lose the bar than actually go to court to win this case. Which is an interesting moment where you realize like the pride that Sam has and the shame he feels in his drinking. So I thought that was kind of a fun and interesting Sam moment. And then Carla comes to the rescue and points out, hey, as long as you marry any Jackie Bissett, you win this bet. It doesn't say the movie star Jacqueline Bissett. So then they immediately say, oh, we need to find a Jacqueline Bissett. Strong 80s moment when Cliff says, I have all the phone books in the country. And this is where we are going to find another Jacqueline Bissett. We're going to call all the Bissetts. We are going to find someone who knows someone named Jacqueline, and we're going to marry her. They track this woman down, a charming actress. I thought that she was really well cast. I liked the actress who played Jackie Bissett a lot.
Agreed.
Made me feel like, someone should have built a sitcom around her. She was charming. She had that great, like, light Southern drawl that made her seem very sweet and innocent. But then you find out, like, oh, I know things that you think I don't know. So not I'm up to something, but I'm smarter than you think I am. She had that fun vibe.
So you were being facetious with me when right before we started rolling, you said this is Dr. Quinn.
That the actress was not Dr. Quinn. Jacqueline Bissett is Dr. Quinn. Hello, May.
He is? Hold on. Wait a minute. Is this?
Oh no. No, I'm sorry. Jacqueline Bissett isn't Dr. Quinn. That's who is that?
That was Jane Seymour, right?
Jane Seymour.
Jane Seymour. Okay.
Jacqueline Bissett and Jane Seymour, I always get confused with each other.
But Jacqueline Bissett is the one who married the Kennedy.
A lot of people married Kennedys.
JFK Jr., right?
No. Carolyn Bissett, I believe, is the one who married JFK Jr.
Okay.
Jacqueline Bissett has never married, much to the chagrin of Sam Malone.
All right, hang on. Who married JFK Jr.? It was a Bissett. And by the way, it's funny. That's a last name that not only like Basinger and Bassinger, where tons of people pronounce it differently, or Dorval and Dorval. But I actually find myself going back and forth between the pronunciations of that last name. Like just in this episode, I've said Bissett and Bissett multiple times.
I noticed.
I am so into this. This is my favorite version of whatever this is. This is my favorite version of it.
Okay, hang on. I'm looking this up. As soon as May realized, Carolyn Bissett. Yes, that was correct.
Okay.
Yes.
R.I.P.
Right,
very tragic story.
Yes. Yep. But related to Jacqueline Bissett.
Related.
I believe.
Ah. Okay.
Don't quote me on it.
Okay. I mean, because how else do you get access to a Kennedy if not through movie star aunts?
You would think. You would think. And that was, oh man, hearts breaking all over town the day that JFK Jr. went off the market.
Oh.
Anyway, so they get Cliff finds a Jacqueline Bisset, promises her all this stuff to get her to come up to Boston, comes up to Boston. Sam takes her on a tour of Boston, talks her into marrying him just to get annulled the next day. Eddie, Michael Richards, comes back in and basically ends up giving up the bet in return for an olive with a pimento. Diane is afraid that young Jackie is going to be upset because she thought she was going to get married. Now she's not. Jackie is absolutely fine with it. And it ends with the requisite 80s comedy sitcom violence where Sam is about to, Jackie says, I can't imagine the woman who actually would fall for that charm. Sam is about to say that Diane and he dated for a year, and she injures him in some way that brings him out of camera behind the bar. Scene. Your initial thoughts on this episode?
Good stage combat when Diane whacked Sam.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. that's really kind of the main sort of high point of this episode.
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't dislike this episode. I wasn't kind of sitting there annoyed with it. I laughed, but yeah, it just didn't. It didn't do much. It didn't feel like it moved the characters forward at all. It wasn't. And for an episode during these first 5 seasons where it's more of a narrative show, an episode where it's not moving the narrative forward, I always want to be a little bit funnier. Like, I'm going to hold your jokes to a higher standard. Not having Coach there means fewer laughs. And this would have been an episode to bring Frasier in for some jokes.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
So it was kind of it just wasn't funny enough for an episode that wasn't telling enough of a story. That was my feeling. It wasn't an episode that made me mad. It just didn't get a lot done. And it's really impressive. I understand that we all have some feelings towards Michael Richards appropriately at this point in our lives. But he's also an actor who managed to pull some huge laughs for a long time on the top sitcom of all time. It's kind of interesting that they couldn't write something funnier for him and that he couldn't wring a few more laughs out of it.
He didn't look funny in this episode, though. He looked just creepy to me.
Well, I mean, that was kind of his vibe a lot of the time.
Yeah. The only time I've ever actually laughed at Seinfeld and or Kramer, I remember because I tried to get into the show. I couldn't. But I remember vividly, I was channel surfing and came across a rerun. And it was when Kramer was beefing with a laundromat owner. And out of spite, he dumped cement in the washing machine.
Yeah.
And because I, too, am spiteful, I laughed.
We can all see ourselves. I mean, the character of Kramer contains multitudes.
Yeah. Michael Richards as an actor is a very interesting guy. Simply in that, I think he and Jason Alexander remind me a lot of each other. In that when they are given the right material in the right surroundings, they can elevate the material. They're very, very talented interpreters of things. Michael Richards is a very funny physical comedian. When he's in the right thing, he really nails it. I think they are both. I've said this a couple of times when they talked about the Seinfeld curse, which was insane because Julia Roberts is just out here like reeling off other hit sitcoms time after time after time.
Louis Dreyfus.
What did I say?
Roberts.
Oh, Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Sorry. Oh, dude. Oh, man. When I get to 50, I'm going to be useless. Julia Louis-Dreyfus is out here putting up Hall of Fame performances in Veep and other shows and just brilliant. I think they choose material badly. And I think when they get good material, they can elevate it. When they get mediocre material, they sink to it as performers. I maybe that's too judgy of me as them but I look at them and I see two actors who are so brilliant with the right material. I mean, Jason Alexander, multiple Tony-winning actor, so funny on Seinfeld. Whatever you think of Seinfeld as a show, I think they're both brilliant performers on it and really crushed it. But Julia Louis-Dreyfus, I almost can't imagine doing some of the bad sitcoms that Jason Alexander and Michael Richards did. And even when she would make appearances on shows where she was like the 4th on the call list or 6th, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, when she was on Day by Day, when she would do those shows, she still stood out as a brilliant performer. And Michael Richards and Jason Alexander, when they are in great stuff, make it even greater. And when they're in mediocre stuff, look even worse. And they're interesting performers that way. And Michael Richards just kind of is there in this episode. There's nothing about him that makes you go like, oh man, the guy playing that part, they're going to make a show for him. They need to find something for that guy.
There's like the one moment where you see like the spark of what he's capable of, or what he can be sort of nudged to do is when he eats the olive. And then he like pops the olive in. His eyes go kind of like weird for like a second, and he turns on Sam with that like kind of like, like trying to recapture his sort of like menace. And like there's that's the one like kind of like funny moment where you're like, oh, this guy's got something more interesting than just kind of like a very bland villain vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's not given really. I mean, the dialogue doesn't give him it, and like it also like the way this episode is set, like he's got to do all the heavy lifting of like moving this like unwieldy rock of a plot forward. So he's just got to be like unpleasant. It's a shame he's not more interesting doing it, but it's almost like, I don't know. Like I wonder how much freedom he was given to sort of like play around when so much of the whole episode kind of relies on him like pushing this thing off a cliff to get it started.
I mean, that's fair, but I feel like we've seen enough Cheers at this point to know when they find someone who's doing something special, they're like, all right, let's let this person cook. I mean, Frasier wasn't supposed to be around for a long time, you know? Right. I mean, Nick Tortelli was probably just supposed to be in an episode. And then Dan Hedaya was killing it so much. And it's like, oh yeah, we need to write more stuff for Dan Hedaya. We need Nick to come back into this life. So it doesn't feel like, and this is James Burrows episode, it doesn't feel like an environment where someone who had something to add couldn't have.
Yeah, fair.
Maybe.
Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, because when he said, oh, it's Eddie Gordon, and Sam comes to that realization that, oh, right. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, this could be a character that's stuck, but something didn't stick.
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, just Harry Anderson come in. Like there have been multiple times where Loretta, like where people came in and were able to just do stuff and make you go, oh, that person's killing it. So just an interesting Michael Richards observation there. As for the rest of the episode, maybe we'll just get into some categories and then we'll kind of move forward with the episode from there. We talked about our 80s moment.
I didn't get to all of
the phone books. Oh, I know you never do. And that's why Tookie goes third in the 80s moments. I said my phone book, Dave. Phone book art specifically was my 80s moment because that was a thing heading into that time where it was less utilitarian and each area did have like some nice fun stuff where, Massachusetts always had some kind of lighthouse or, oceanscape print. And it was always fun. I do remember that I used to like the way the phone book looked. Yeah. Dave, what is your 80s moment?
I'm going to go with Carla, who I thought Carla had a fun, they wrote a fun episode for Carla. Like I thought her lines were fun and gave a lot of energy to an episode, which kind of like sprawled out in a lot of different directions. But she at one point called Jackie Bissett Mammy Yoakum, and I enjoyed that because this is Mammy Yoakum, of course, a character from a comic strip that stopped airing or stopped running in 1977. This felt like the last era that you could reference Little Abner in any sort of popular culture. So I'm going to go with the use of Mammy Yoakum as a southern put down of Jackie Bissett.
Mm-hmm. Good call. Yep. Yeah, I wonder how many people would be watching. This is interesting. Like when you heard Mammy Yoakum, Tookie, did you automatically assume it was something racist?
A little bit, but yeah,
because you hear that. Yeah, you hear that though, and you're just like, oh, racist. Yeah.
I mean, now that Aunt
Reasonable.
Jemima is the pearl milling company.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I Googled it. That was definitely in one of my moments because I was like, what the frick is like I was like, should I feel offended? Like I had the moment. I was like, did this reference violate my civil rights? Like that's the thought that I had. So I made sure to Google it, and that made it onto the list of moments because I was like, what?
See, I might be one of the last living performers to have performed in the musical Little Abner in 1991
Oh my
or two
gosh.
in
Pappy, right?
high school. Yeah, I was Pappy Yoakum, so
What?
I knew the reference immediately. But again, like I can't imagine anybody did Lil Abner after we did.
Was there politically incorrect stuff in that musical, or was it just dated?
Mostly, I think the stuff that's aged most poorly is references to indigenous people, which there aren't many, but there's a couple of characters I think that have certainly problematic names.
Fair. All right, Tookie, your 80s moments.
Okay. I mentioned how Tom the lawyer or law student looks like a 1980s and early 90s Ken doll with the plastered on hair. That's one. The constant mention of Jacqueline Bisset as a movie star. I was like, whoa, okay, she must have been a big deal. Okay. There was a shot of the Red Line, an old Red Line train at MGH station, if I'm not mistaken, during one of the opening scenes, and it was coming up, and its last stop was Harvard, and I was like, "Whoa, 80s moment."
Yeah, and that's the shot they used pretty much the entirety of the show.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they never updated that.
Yeah. So a shot of the Red Line going to Harvard. Sam talking about historic City Hall. I think this was before that brutalist nightmare was built in Government Center.
No, this is after Government Center came about before the 80s.
Okay.
But Old City Hall, if I'm not mistaken, it does still stand. It's actually where Ruth's Chris Steakhouse is today. Yes.
Yes. No, I know where Old City Hall is. So very historic City Hall. Okay. Yeah. So we'll scratch that off the list.
But yeah, the West End, because Government Center took the place of the West End, and that actually happened, if I'm not mistaken, in the 50s.
Yeah.
That was post-war, urban renewal.
Yeah.
Where they really tore down the West End.
They tore up Leonard Nimoy's home, which is messed up on a lot of levels. Okay, so we'll scratch
rid of a lot of affordable housing too.
So we'll scratch that off the list. So the next one after that, but it was when Sam was telling Jackie Bissett about touring Boston. He's like, oh, Old City Hall, Old North Church, and then we'll finish it off with a Boston blood test, which he said in passing, but people used to get blood tests before they got married. And I was like, whoa, throwback moment. Because, clean bill of health and all, not to violate HIPAA. But that's not something that we had to do when we were filling out our paperwork.
Nope.
Me and the guy who I love who lives in my house, whatever.
Yeah.
So the blood test, I was like, what? Mammy Yoakum as a reference, the whole trope of a country bumpkin in the big city, which I know coming later along, that's Woody's whole gig. But like really leaning into the countryness of it felt like an 80s trope, especially because she had like the little doily shirt thing and like was really, down home on the prairie. And portraying that kind of prairie life, provincial life was a thing in the 80s, I felt. And then the Justice of the Peace coming in right after his wife gave birth to their miracle baby. The idea that just dudes could just stroll out of the delivery room. Wife sploops out a kid, then you just, go to the bar. So that
was an alternate I had for my 80s moment was father's work. His work is finished. Why isn't he here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the rundown of all the 80s stuff that I caught. And then a kind of a bonus 80s moment, but not really, but something that I feel like not middle age, but just like a grown tax-paying adult men would talk about in the 80s when Norm was talking about he sent $1 for an advertisement in the back of Rolling Stone magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how he became a sort of ordained minister.
That was the thing. That's how, Tim McIntyre, right?
Yeah.
That's why he used to be called the Reverend Tim McIntyre.
Oh
That was
God.
a part of his like stage persona and name, because he was sent away for, in the back of Rolling Stone. Yeah, he used to marry a bunch of comedians.
I missed him. I hope he's well.
Yeah, he's well.
Good dude.
He's a good man.
Yeah.
He's a good man. All right, joke of the week. Tookie, what's your joke of the week?
The exchange between Diane and Carla. When Carla goes, I got an idea. And Diane says, you mean you conceive something other than a child?
Very good. Very good. My joke of the week is an exchange between Diane and Sam. It says, when you picture me in your dreams, what am I wearing? And she says, an anthill. That made me crack up both times. Anthill, very funny, very creative.
The way she hits the T in anthill was delightful.
Very, very well delivered. Dave, what was your joke of the week?
This was not my joke of the week, but I want to recognize the power of Nicholas Colasanto to still allow a coach joke to happen even when he's not present. When Sam's on the phone with him and he hangs up by saying, we're very proud of you. And Carla says, he passed his driver's test. And Sam says, no, he found Vermont. Perfect coach joke, even without coach being there, still gave it that little coach nudge. My favorite joke of the week was Norm, though. When Sam's trying to convince Jackie to marry him in the bar. And she says, Sam, I always thought my wedding day would be beautiful and special. And he says, it will be. We'll get a minister to have it right here. And she says, a bar? You think that's beautiful and special? Oh, no, Norm says, we'll get a minister to have it right here in the bar. She says, you think that's beautiful and special? And Norm, in a moment of self-awareness, says, maybe you're asking the wrong guy.
Very nice. Tookie, how white was this week's episode?
You know what? This was not that white. Happy to say. We're hitting a stride here. I think season 3, they're really trying to, liven up the background with the extras. So in the first scene, we had in the cold opening, there was a black man in a red velour 80s jacket situation with a fro on the back wall talking to another black man in a pink shirt. The first scene, there was a black man in an argyle sweater by the stairs, and then 2 black men at the jukebox, a black couple at the far end of the hall, a black man wearing I think gray, and he had a yellow cardigan draped over him, and he passed by the bar. In scene 2, that was the most sparse. That was a black man who was by Cliff and on the phone. And then in the third scene, which is sort of split into scene 3A and scene 3B, there was a black man behind Diane with a black woman next to him in a red hat. They were sitting on that table and chairs by the jukebox, a black man with a newspaper sitting by the stairs by Melville, a black man in a navy blazer at the bar on the far end. And then in the scene, scene 3B, the man in the argyle sweater returns. So they reused one of the extras. And there was a black man and a black woman in a group talking with friends by the piano. So overall, we have 15 with 16 as the bonus return of the man in the argyle sweater. So not bad.
It's really it has to have some intentionality behind it, right? It would be so easy to not do that in 1985. It's funny. I feel like I've taken the series to task for not promoting a lot of people of color with speaking parts, but I feel like I have to give them some credit for trying to represent the bar as a place of inclusivity in this more sort of subtle way, at least.
Yeah. Fair, said the whitest person who ever lived. Yeah, fair. That's a great point.
Oh, you act like you were a character on the early season of The Simpsons. It's fine. I forgive you for a lot. Also, justice for
Thank you.
Frank Grimes. I'm still angry about that.
Oh, Grimy. Poor Grimy. I do love that episode where you really do stop and say, like, yeah, that house is big.
It is big.
They do find a lot of money to spend. Yeah. All right. How creepy was the Sam creepy quotient this week? How creepy was Sam?
He was creepy under duress,
Mm.
so I give it a 4.8.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was more like uh, of all of his defects that were on display, like his sort of sexual creepiness was like the least of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it did seem like he was trying to be very conscious of making her feel at ease, but it did come about with like, do you see how beautiful I am? Like, you really don't have to worry about this. You know, I'm so lovely that clearly I wouldn't need to do anything like this. This is obviously genuine. So yeah, for me it was a 3.52.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was trying to think when he said, "Let me take you for a drive around Boston," and I tried to think in that moment, like, would I get in the car with him? And I was like, I think I would, which means that his creepiness has to be at as low as it's going to possibly get.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I'm going to get an estranged man just off the plane into a car and tour around the city, yeah, he's got to be putting out a vibe that at least says like, I might be self-centered, but I'm not a threat.
He was more cringe than creepy this episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well put. Yeah, well put. All right, where's this episode ranking on the season for you, in a general sense?
Would have been a banger in season 2.
Yeah, yeah, it's somewhere towards the top of the bottom, I think, for what
Yeah.
it is.
It's funny. There's all these kind of like weird little like it just kind of like unrolls in weird directions. Like I kind of enjoyed the Cliff Tom scenes, and
Mhm.
I kind of enjoyed that weird Norm talking about his getting high, huffing adding machine tape. There were all these kind of like weird little like mini scenes that were fun that ultimately didn't add up to anything, but they were pleasant and I thought like yeah, the jokes weren't like screamers, but there was some like nice like back and forths between characters. So like I'd put this like this is, for me is like probably like right square in the middle of the season.
A thought slash theory, because you know how there's sort of like this theory, this unspoken thing about Cliff's character may have been gay, like, or was initially supposed to have been like the first openly gay character on a sitcom.
Mhm.
The way Cliff is sort of schoolboyish back when we allowed boys to be outwardly toxic towards girls they had crushes on. The way he ribs Tom and then says something moderately homoerotic, but like pauses himself or catches himself in what the early 2000s we would have called a don't, oh my God, I'm going to get canceled for this. I already know someone's going to take it out of context, but like a no homo moment.
Mhm.
Wouldn't it be interesting if Tom were Cliff's crush?
Mm. That would be interesting. I mean, it's a very unique relationship. It's the only time where Cliff is kind of allowed to be the clever wordsmith in any of his relationships with people in the bar. And he kind of holds over Tom in that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if that was, yeah, just a function of him having that weird crush energy on Tom, that would be interesting.
Yeah. Because I really do think it's a missed opportunity to like not represent, you know, because we have all these interesting characters who come in and out of the bar. I think there was missed opportunities in the mailman who kind of scares the bejesus out of Cliff. What's his name again? I'm forgetting.
Lewis.
Lewis, a missed opportunity to like bring some more depth towards his like, because you know there aren't any main characters of color on the show anyway, and then just to have like that representation, like a missed opportunity in terms of having Cliff, you know, have more to his character than just being kind of annoying. Like,
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer that like Boys in the Bar, which is probably like pretty groundbreaking for its time. Like the message of that episode is that like gay people are just like you and me, as opposed to like, hey, there's this wide panoply of human existence, and yeah, you can't necessarily spot somebody, you can't tell somebody's sexual identity by looking at them, but there's, you know, they don't all have to like conform to, you know, being ex-catchers in the major leagues either, and they don't have to like pass. You know, somebody can be who they want to be, and there's an opportunity to explore that a little bit, maybe with Cliff, that certainly doesn't ever get picked up on.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Interesting thought. An interesting thought. I'm curious if that ever. I've heard the theory. I've never totally bought the theory. I think it's interesting to talk about. I would love to, like, at some point hear if a writer on that show actually said, "Yeah, we talked about it. Like, we kicked it around and then decided the world wasn't ready for it." It'd be interesting if those tones were there and written in there by somebody. Yeah, I would love to find that out. All right, we're going to put this one in the books. Season 3, episode 18, Bar Bets. You were fine.
Can I really appreciated the fact that they got the same justice of the peace from season 1 from the wedding that where Diane's mother forced Sam and Diane to almost get married.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Yep, same guy,
Oh, wow.
same character name. I didn't realize it until I looked on IMDb. Yeah, it's Dean Pittman is the actor. He's playing Harrison Fiedler, who is the same Justice of the Peace that gets brought in season 1.
Good on you, Dean Pittman.
Yeah, really, and good on the writers for like keeping an internal like cast of characters in the in this world.
Wow, Cheers has its own MCU
It
equivalent.
really does. Yeah, there's a Fiedler spin-off somewhere, like with him and his miracle baby.
Oh my God, who in the Cheers universe got blipped when the Thanos snap happened?
Oh man, you know, Cliff was just like,
or Norm was a wreck.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
You just seeing Cliff like sitting there, like looking at the beer, like, and then the empty stool and the beer.
Oh,
I imagine. Yeah, it was Norm that got blipped, and then he got blipped back and didn't even realize anything had changed for like a week.
No.
Had no idea the blip had occurred.
uh,
Did you guys watch Hawkeye?
Yes.
no.
There's a great scene in there where Yelena, who is like my new favorite MCU character, she gets blipped, and then you see her come back.
That's
and
a
it's
great
just
scene,
like,
yeah.
whoa. Like, she doesn't totally realize what happened at first. Then she comes out, and it's 5 years later. It's really cool. Yeah.
She's like Florence Pugh is awesome.
Amazing.
In that show and in Black Widow. She's a wonderful actor.
She kills it. She was in a movie that I thought should have done a little bit better, and it might have just been because of my history as a wrestling fan. She did this movie called Fighting with My Family, that I really thought was quite charming, and I thought she was great in it. Yeah. And I almost feel like it gets judged harshly because I think like WWE had a hand in producing it. But it's out on Amazon, and it's worth a watch just because she's so good.
That was a fun one. I agree.
Yeah.
I saw it.
She's really good. She's very good. All right. How was everyone's Christmas?
Tolerable.
Yeah.
All right.
Getting through. Got through it. Getting through everything.
I had Chinese food, and it was really good.
Excellent.
Very nice. As did we.
Yeah. They've got good Chinese food in Maine. We were up in Maine.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
All right. Am I the only one who got COVID?
I'm sorry.
Of the three of us?
I haven't tested since Saturday, but I'm living with it, so I'm kind of expecting to get it.
Yeah. It's very weird. I want to be careful with what I'm saying because, again, theater and dramatic literature degree.